Hello, welcome to this tutorial where we'll learn how to classify primary, secondary, and tertiary amines and alcohols. Understanding these classifications is important because they determine how these compounds behave in chemical reactions. By the end of this video, you'll be able to easily identify whether a given amine or alcohol is primary, secondary, or tertiary. I'll also share some simple tricks and examples to make learning easier. So let's start. So first of all, alcohols. Alcohols is any organic compound that has in it the OH hydroxyl functional group. So here in front of you, I am sharing some examples of alcohols. So to be an alcohol, the chain must contain an OH group. So alcohol must contain a hydroxyl functional group. Hydroxyl functional group attached to a chain of carbons. Okay, now we have three classifications of alcohol: primary, secondary, and tertiary. When we want to classify an alcohol, we need to look at the C holding that hydroxyl group. So here we go. Here's the carbon holding the hydroxyl group. And you count how many hydrogens on it. So here's an example. I have 2 or 3 hydrogens. That makes it a primary alcohol. Let's take another example. Let's look at this alcohol. Over here, that's the carbon holding the OH group. How many hydrogens this carbon is holding? It is attached to 2 hydrogen. That makes it a primary alcohol. Another example. Here's another alcohol. Here's the OH group. And here's the carbon holding this OH group. And I can count 1 hydrogen. So that is a secondary alcohol. Now let me give you a trick. Memorize this expression: 1 for 2, 2 for 1. Meaning, when you count 2 hydrogens, you say primary. And when you count 1 hydrogen, you say secondary. Okay, another example over here. Here's the OH group, and here's the carbon holding it. Now this carbon has C, C, and C, so no hydrogens on it. That makes it a tertiary alcohol. One last example. Here, that's the carbon holding the OH, and from all sides, no hydrogens on it. So that's a tertiary alcohol. I'll give one more example. Here's an alcohol. Here's the carbon holding the hydroxyl group. Now carbon can make 4 bonds. First, second, and this is the 3rd bond, and that's the 4th with hydrogen. So this one has 1 hydrogen. So as I said, 1 for 2, 2 for 1. I am counting 1 hydrogen. I'll say secondary alcohol. Another example, last one. And here's OH. Now this is the carbon holding the OH group, and it has 2 hydrogens. 2 hydrogen, you say primary. Now, moving on to classifying amines. Now, amines are carbon chains containing a nitrogen atom. So, carbon chain containing nitrogen atoms, N atoms. And amines can be classified into primary, secondary, and tertiary. So let's look at these given compounds. As you can see, all of them, there's an N atom in it. Now, I can explain it and say that you need to count the alkyl groups or the substituents of N. But I'm going to do it in a tricky and simple way. You have to know that nitrogen can make 3 bonds. Nitrogen can make 3 bonds. Again, the expression 1 for 2, 2 for 1. And I mean, when you count 1 hydrogen, you say secondary. And when you count 2 hydrogens, you say primary. When you don't count hydrogens, you say tertiary. Now, the difference between amines and alcohols, in alcohols, I'm counting the carbon, the hydrogens held by the carbon holding that OH group. Whereas here, I look at N itself. How many hydrogen N has? 2. I am counting 2, so I say primary amine. Another example. Here's N. There's a carbon from this side and this side and this side. So no hydrogens on N over here. Therefore, that's a tertiary amine. This example, here's N. There's a carbon, there's a benzene, and there's a hydrogen. I am counting 1 hydrogen on this N group. So it is secondary amine. One more example. Here's an N. No hydrogen on this N. Tertiary amine. This amine. Here's an N, and I'm counting 2 hydrogens. And when you count 2, you say primary. When you count 1, you say secondary. So this one is a primary amine. And last example, no hydrogens on this one. That's a tertiary amine. Thank you for listening.